Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Europe is way more powerful than you think. I already think it's already super powerful. I should hope so. They're a huge continent and there's a lot of countries, a lot of powerful countries that form Europe. So how more powerful can they get? But I don't know. Let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
So there's a narrative going around MAGA circles right now. You've probably seen it. They look at military spending. The US spends $997 billion on defense, while Europe spends $454 billion. And they conclude that Europe is helpless, that Europe needs America, that Trump can do whatever he wants, and that they, us, will just have to take it. This is the logic of someone who has never thought about why America is powerful in the first place. Yes, the United States has the most powerful military on the planet. Nobody disputes that. But here's the question MAGA never asks. Where does that military come from? How does the United States afford 11 aircraft carrier strike groups and 750 military bases around the world?
That's a lot of bases.
Is the economy. The US military is downstream of American economic dominance. The dollar's status as the world's reserve currency lets America borrow at rates that no other country can match. The centrality of American finance means capital flows into US Treasury bonds from every corner of the globe. That's what funds the Pentagon. That is what makes the aircraft carriers possible. And here's what the tank counters don't understand. That economic dominance isn't a natural fact. It isn't geography. It's not destiny. It's a system. A system America built after World War II and has spent 80 years maintaining. A system based on one thing above all else: trust. And here is the thing that MAGA hasn't thought about. Europe has real leverage over that trust. We hold $8 trillion in US bonds and equities. They've got a trade bazooka that can shut American companies out of 450 million consumers overnight. We'll get to all of that, trust me. But first, we need to truly appreciate why American power is so uniquely fragile and why Russia can survive isolation and America can't. The world uses dollars because they trust America. They buy treasury bonds because they trust America. They route their transactions through American banks because they trust that the United States will be a reliable, predictable, rule-following anchor of the global system. And here's the cruel irony. The very thing that makes America powerful is the thing that makes it vulnerable. Russia can survive being cut off from the West. They've been preparing for it for a decade. After Crimea, they started building alternative payment systems. They slashed their dollar reserves. They pivoted to China. When the sanctions hit in 2022, it hurt a lot. But their economy was already structured to absorb the blow. Same with China. They've got SIPs, their alternative to SWIFT. They've got 1 billion domestic customers. They're not fully integrated into the Western financial system, which means they're not fully exposed to it. America is the opposite. America didn't build walls against the global economy. America is the global economy. The US isn't strong despite being interconnected with the world. It's strong because of it. Every thread of global finance runs through New York. Every major transaction touches the dollar. That's not a side effect of American power. That's the source of it. Which means that when America acts like a rogue state, when it threatens to tear up treaties, invade allies, seize territories because the president had a tantrum about a medal, it doesn't just damage its reputation, it shakes the foundations of the very system that makes it powerful. As a Cambridge University paper put it, trust is cumulative and relational, but it can also dissipate when the hegemon is seen as unpredictable or self-serving. Russia gets sanctioned and pivots.
I think trust is something that's one of the easiest things to get lost.
China, the bilateral trade hit $240 billion, with China now supplying 38% of Russian imports. America gets isolated, and what? Pivots to whom? The world is already oriented around America. There's nowhere to pivot to. The network doesn't have a backup hub. So let's talk about what's actually happening. If Trump lands troops in Greenland, and yes, I know that he almost certainly won't, he's Taco Trump after all, but if he did, first, NATO dies. Instantly. The Danish Prime Minister said it explicitly. If the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including our NATO. Republican Congressman Michael McCaul, Chairman Emeritus of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said an invasion would turn Article 5 on its very head and, in essence, press a war with NATO itself. He said it would abolish NATO as we know it.
What would be the point?
He's right. 75 years of collective security gone. The alliance that won the Cold War, that kept the peace in Europe, that gave America forward deployed bases across an entire continent, finished because of Greenland. And who benefits?
It's insane.
Like really, who benefits? Russia. The Kremlin is already celebrating. Putin's spokesman said Trump would go down in history if he pulled this off.
Oh,
One of
obviously
Putin's
like
top
it.
aides said it proves the transatlantic alliance is over.
Of
This
course
is
I
the
like
gift of
this.
Vladimir Putin that he could only have dreamt of. But let's talk economics, because this is where the Europe can't hurt us crowd reveals that they haven't thought about this for 5 minutes. The EU
I
and
agree.
the US have the most integrated economic relationship
Yeah.
in the world. Together, they represent 43% of global GDP and nearly 30% of global trade.
These numbers
in
are
2024,
insane.
transatlantic trade hit 1.68 trillion.
I don't even know what a
euros.
trillion
That is
is.
not a minor trading partner. That's the foundation of American prosperity. European companies directly employ 5 million Americans.
lot of people.
5 million jobs, more than the entire population of Ireland. European investment in the United
How many
States
people are in
stands
Ireland?
at $3.2 trillion. 56% of all foreign investment in America. More than half of every foreign dollar invested in the United States
Comes from Europe?
comes from Europe. And
Ah.
it flows the other way too. Of course it does.
Yeah.
Apple, Google,
Everything.
Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, they pull somewhere between 160 billion and 300 billion in
These
revenue from
numbers
European
are just
customers
mind-blowing to me.
every year. The Magnificent Seven tech companies earn between 51% and 63% of their revenue from foreign markets, with Europe as a major share.
It's the major,
The
I
European
would
single
assume.
market is 450 million people with money to spend. That's not
It's just a lot of people that live there. Of course, they're going to be your biggest market.
market you walk away from. So what does Europe do when America, if America, invades a NATO ally? We have options. Real options. The EU has something called the Anti-Coercion Instrument. It's never
is
been
that?
used. They call it
my
the
God.
Trade Bazooka. It allows the EU to shut American companies out of the European single market entirely, restricting trade licenses, blocking access
can do
to
that?
public procurement, limits on foreign direct investment, sanctions on specific companies and individuals. France is already pushing for it. Macron
Oh.
called Trump's tariffs
They want to?
unacceptable and demanded a united and coordinated response. And if Europe doesn't go nuclear, they've got a €93 billion retaliatory tariff package sitting on the shelf from last year, specifically designed to hit Republican states. Bourbon, soybeans, aircraft parts that hurt Boeing. Then there's the pharmaceutical angle. The US is the world's largest pharmaceutical importer. Since 2023, pharmaceuticals
China.
were the top American import from the EU. $170 billion worth. Europe supplies 25% of all active pharmaceutical ingredients used in American drug manufacturing. 90% of US biotech companies rely on imported components. You want to talk about national security? Try explaining to American cancer patients why their chemotherapy drugs aren't arriving because the president wanted to steal an island the size of Mexico for its minerals.
That's
Then there's the
awful.
financial dimension, the one that could really break things. European countries hold $8 trillion in US bonds and equities.
I get what the amount of
Almost
money.
twice as much as the rest of the world.
my God.
combined. Deutsche Bank's head of FX research has been explicit. Europe has significant leverage over America in global financial markets.
I can
The
see
dollar
that.
status as the world's reserve currency, that exorbitant privilege that lets America borrow cheaply and run massive deficits, depends on trust. Trust that American institutions are stable. Trust that the rule of law means something. Trust that the
Always.
United States won't seize an allied territory
Yes.
because the president didn't get an award. When that trust erodes, the dollar erodes. A Federal Reserve paper confirms the link. The loss of the US dollar's reserve currency status may thus presage a large decline in the global power of the US.
But that's
and
bad.
This economic advantage allows the US to finance a large and powerful military more easily. The dollar already dropped against the euro when Trump announced these tariffs.
Well, I don't think that's a
which
lot,
of course he's
right?
went back on now already because it's Taco Trump. Meanwhile, gold
is
hit a
this?
record high. The markets are watching, and they're starting to price in the possibility that the United States might be run by someone who doesn't understand that the system isn't separate from American power.
What did you know?
It is American power. Peter Schiff, the economist, put it bluntly. The dollar's reserve currency status allows us to live beyond our means. Soaring debt, tariffs, and military threats jeopardize that status. When it's lost, economic collapse will follow.
This is very hard.
Yes, the United States could possibly take Greenland militarily. Of course they could. Denmark has about 150 permanent personnel there, and a few hundred European troops doing exercises. It's not a fair fight. But this isn't about the fight. It's about what comes after. NATO collapses. The EU activates economic retaliation. European investment starts flowing out of America.
It's economic
American
collapse.
companies lose access to 450 million consumers. The dollar wobbles. Borrowing costs rise. The country
all the markets would collapse.
That spent 75 years building an international order that made it the most powerful nation on earth becomes a pariah.
Down
the
the
system
drain.
that funds the tanks and the carriers and the bases starts to crack. Russia can survive outside the Western system. They've spent a decade building the infrastructure for it. America cannot.
They are the
America
system.
is the Western system.
Yeah.
And you can't burn down your own house to spite your own neighbors. The MAGA crowd looks at military spending and thinks, that's power. But military spending is an output. The input is economic centrality, global trust, and the willingness of the world to keep buying American debt and routing their money through American banks. Trump is threatening to torture all of that. He has already done irreparable damage. For an island, the US already has military access to. All because he didn't get a medal. Because no one in power has any fucking balls. This isn't strength. This is the geopolitical equivalent of a billionaire burning his company to the ground because someone didn't clap hard enough at his speech. There are, however, two winners if Trump keeps going the way that he's going.
Hopefully not.
Russia and China.
Well, okay, that's bad. I think it's a little bit cut off your nose to spite your face. Taking resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I think it's a little bit of that. I think if those are the reasons, if those are indeed the reasons, of course, why would you do that? I think maybe all political advisors are telling you, maybe do not do this. I think maybe you should pay attention and say, you know what, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this isn't a good, course of action. I honestly, I do not believe this really does come to pass. I think it's just, or hopefully, hopefully it doesn't come to pass. I think maybe it's just a way of, I just do not really believe. I think maybe it's not just my hope because again, it will be catastrophic, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense because of the way of all the reasons that this person was discussing about. I don't know if it's an economist or something or an analyst, but I think all the reasons he pointed out. If you're an outsider and you're telling us this, I believe, presidents have a whole bunch of advisors telling them exactly this. So I would assume and expect that they know, oh no, we can't really do this. This would be bad. This would be catastrophic. So maybe do not do this. I think maybe, in general, just invading countries. I don't think that's a good thing in general. Especially, I think a country that really, it's Greenland. Yeah, Greenland is a country. I think it's a territory. I don't think it's an actual country. I think it's a territory because I know they have some sort of autonomy, but Denmark, I think, is in charge of them. I think it's just a complicated sort of geopolitical thing. But in general, they're a territory that's already been sort of occupied in a way. So why would you do this? I don't know what you have to gain. It's just a lot of, I would assume it's just, I don't know, maybe you just want to, you talk a lot and you talk a lot, but there's no real, there's not a lot of actions and you're just discussing this and you're talking this. I think, you're speaking, you're creating a show, you're creating things for the drama to give people something to talk about, but not because you actually want to follow through. That's what I would assume. I think that's probably the best case scenario, seeing how catastrophic and awful it would be for the economy. Let's hope it's sad. And I genuinely believe that. I think, yes, of course, he's just talking and saying a lot of things, but it's just because, he enjoys the drama. He enjoys being someone that people really do talk about, this person, and I love when people talk about me. I think maybe he's that kind of person, so I would assume, that's why he's doing this. But I don't really believe that he's going to take all of this, and again, he's going to just sink everything to the ground, basically, just for acquiring a territory that he said, well, it's a really large territory, but unless that territory has something of great importance to you that you can't, you can't get anywhere else, why would you go through all that hassle? So that's what I'm talking about, and that's what I mean when I say it's probably all, because you like to be in the mouth of everyone, the name on everybody slips, he loves this. So I would assume that's really the case. But I think it will be catastrophic, as he mentioned, not just, I think, and it really does make a good point about not just for the American people, but for, I think, everyone involved. I think the only winners would be Russia and China, which, well, of course they're happy. They're probably, we would love for this to happen. But for the rest of the world, which I don't know if that's, well, I don't know how, but population wise, who's bigger? I think Russia and China together versus the rest of the world, or are Russia and China enough to sort of overpower the rest of the population in all over the world? But I don't think it's a good thing, so unless that's why, maybe you shouldn't do this. I don't know, that's my 2 cents. Maybe do not, because it would be catastrophic, not just for people in the United States, just for everyone that's not Russia or China, which, again, even though it's a lot of people, I think it's just, I would assume, a small segment of the world population. So maybe do not do this. We don't want another war, I don't know, 4, 3. No, it will be a third. But I don't think we would need that. We don't need that as humanity and as citizens in these modern times. I don't think we need another war, but that's just me. So, this was a really scary video, I have to say. Although, again, logically, it doesn't make sense, and it even makes, it made less sense to me. It made less sense to me before this video. It still continues to not make sense to me, just because, again, you're just throwing a tantrum. I don't know. Again, it's just, let's hope it doesn't come to pass, because it would be awful. And that's all I have to say about this. And that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye!